Hello guys, this is Zarzu's YUGIOH. In today's discussion, we're going to discuss cheaper alternatives to expensive cards. These are cheap alternatives to some popular ultra-rare cards. Note: this card may not fully fulfill the same role as those ultra-rare cards, as those ultra-rare cards can be one of a kind or do have much better restrictions than this cheaper alternatives. In straightforward terms, there are better, but either way, this card can be a helpful addition to your deck if you are still earning some ultra-rare materials. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring cheaper alternatives are Mistake and Droll and Lockbird. Ash Blossom is one of a kind, so it can't be replaced, but here are some of the closest. Mistake is the closest, but it's not a hand trap and it's also not really a budget on the super rare price tag. You also have Droll and Lockbird, but be careful as these two have really different roles and usage. It's the closest hand trap to Ash Blossom. Infinite Impermanence cheaper alternatives are Psyframe Gamma, Memory Loss, Fiendish Chain, Breakthrough Skills, Lost Wind, Titanicider, and Forbidden Chalice. Infinite Impermanence is easy if monster on the field negation in trap card form, but in hand traps, there is no monster negation in trap type in the hand trap category. Psyframe Gamma is the closest hand trap to this as it can also negate and can't be countered by Called by the Grave. In monster negation in trap form, there are so many, but this trap can only be activated on the field. Memory Loss, Fiendish Chain Breakthrough Skills, Lost Wind, Titanicider, and Forbidden Chalice. Infinite Impermanence is one of a kind because it's a trap card that can negate monster effects that can be activated from both hand and field. That's why it's so versatile. Effect Valor cheaper alternative is Psyframe Gamma. Psyframe Gamma is the closest to Effect Valor. They both negate monster effects, but Gamma destroys too. Sometimes it's better, but the thing is, Gamma can only be activated when there is no monster in the field, unlike Effect Valor. Even if you have a monster, you can still use it. They both have their ups and downs, but there you go. Psyframe Gamma is the cheaper alternative. Dark Ruler No More and Forbidden Droplet cheaper alternative is Forbidden Chalice. This one is hard because there's almost no close effect to these two negate monster and help to break boards, but Forbidden Chalice is a cheaper alternative to Droplet as it can also negate. Dark Hole Lightning Vortex and Evenly Matched are also great board breakers, but they can't negate. They only rid monsters on boards, so they have different usage too. Kaiju and Lava Golem are not spells but can also be good alternatives in board breaking. Called by the Grave cheaper alternative is Prohibition. Prohibition is the cheaper alternative to Called by the Grave, but be careful using this as it's not reactive as you have to declare what you want to negate first and it also stays on the field. So you have to guess what hand trap they have in the hand or what card to negate, so it's a lot weaker than Called by the Grave, where you don't have to guess. You just have to chain it when they activate it. Cross-Sout Designator cheaper alternative is Prohibition 2. Prohibition is also the cheaper alternative to Cross-Sout Designator. Same story as before, be careful using this as it's not reactive as you have to declare what you want to negate first and it also stays on the field. Imperial Order cheaper alternative is Anti-Spell Fragrance. This is an easy recommendation and a cheaper alternative. It can't negate spells, but it can slow them down. Lightning Storm cheaper alternatives are Dark Hole, Lightning Vortex, Evenly Matched. There are less expensive alternatives to Lightning Storm. Note that Lightning Storm has two different effects. That's why this is so versatile, but if you want a card that can rid all opponent monsters, Dark Hole and Lightning Vortex are cheap alternatives, and if you have the free Reiki, you can also use that too. Or even Evenly Matched can rid almost every opponent card. Harp's Feather Duster cheaper alternatives are Hey, Trinad, Twin Twister, Heavy Storm Duster, Galaxy Cyclone, Cosmic Cyclone, Mystical Space Typhoon, and Spiritualism. Hey, Trinad is that close, but it doesn't destroy, it only bounces. But hey, there's a lot cheaper Backrow removal out there, like Twin Twister, Heavy Storm Duster, Galaxy Cyclone, Cosmic Cyclone, Mystical Space Typhoon, Spiritualism, and more. Solemn Judgment cheaper alternatives are Solemn Scolding, Ultimate Providence, and Dark Bribe. Solemn Judgment is a counter trap that can negate almost everything except monster effects. If you want the cheapest, Solemn Scolding is the closest, and it does also negate monster effects, unlike Solemn Judgment, which doesn't negate monster effects, it only negates summons. The only thing Solemn Scolding is bad for is that the restriction for this is that you can only have it set if there are no other cards that are set to your spell and trap zone. So it's kind of a rough condition, especially if you play a Backrow deck. I think Ultimate Providence is the best cheap alternative to Solemn Judgment. It just can't negate summons, but it can negate spells, traps, and monster effects as long as you can ditch the same type of card in your hand. Dark Bribe is also a cheap alternative, but the only thing I kind of don't want to play is that it lets your opponent draw one card, therefore making it -1. Also, it can't negate monster effects and summon. It can only negate spells and traps. Solemn Strike cheaper alternatives are Solemn Scolding, Solemn Warning, Divine Wrath, and Recall. Solemn Strike is a staple counter trap that can negate a monster effect. I already discussed Solemn Scolding as a cheap rare card. Solemn Warning is also a great alternative here, but the only thing is that it can't negate monster effects, only special summons. Divine Wrath is the closest thing to Solemn Strike in terms of negating monster effects, but it cannot negate special summons. It does also have a cost to discard one card, so it's a lot weaker to Solemn Strike, but hey, it's a lot cheaper with a normal rarity price tag. Recall is a super rare card that is also like Divine Wrath. It's super rare rarity and kind of pricey but cheaper to strike. The only difference is it's like Dark Bribe. It lets your opponent draw one card. As I really don't like this drawback of giving your opponent a free card, as that one card can advance their game state, I much prefer to have a discard cost over letting my opponent draw one card. Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion cheaper alternatives are DD Crow, Skullmeister, and Artifact Lanza. They have different roles, but they also commonly negate graveyard effects. DD Crow and Skullmeister are sometimes better than Ghost Bell in my opinion because they don't have any hard once per turn effects, so if you have two of them, you can use them all. Artifact Lanza is different but also close to Ghost Bell in shutting down graveyard effects as both of you and your opponent cannot banished. Thank you for watching. If I help you out, consider watching my other discussions and subscribing to my channel. Thank you very much. Take care.